Well, good morning and welcome, Cypress. And thank you. Happy Father's Day, everybody. Happy Father's Day. So I thought in light of Father's Day, and really just with families in general in mind, I wanted to open with this. I wonder how many of you in your families you have somebody who is in the Gen Z generation. And I see lots of you out there. I know quite a few families. In fact, I see some Zoomers out there, some Gen Z Zoomers. And by the way, we would define this by anybody who's like 23 years old or younger. Right? So if you've got a Zoomer in your family, all four of our kids are in this generation. And we love this generation. Like if you've spent any time with Zoomers or Gen Z folks, there's so many great things about this generation, so many things we love about them. But one of the things that we've learned, and we've noticed with our kids specifically, especially our younger two, is that they're starting to use some words, or they've started to use some phrases that frankly make no sense to me. And so, in fact, some of these words or phrases, they're in some cases they're like confusing. In other cases, they're a little bit concerning. And so, really, about a year ago, I started asking our kids, like, help me understand what you are actually trying to say in this moment with the words that you're using right now. And so, my son Gibson just jumped all over this, and he's like every once in a while, and this has been going on for a while. He'll just say, "Dad, here's a new one you need to learn," and he'll introduce the slang term, whatever it is, and helps me know how to properly use it. And so after a few months, or maybe close to a year or more, after some careful observation, I'm starting to understand their customs and their ways. I'm even starting to learn their language. And so I wanted to try to pass on some of this to you this morning with dads in mind, but really just with all of you. So if you're having a conversation with a Zoomer, you know what's going on. Okay, so here's some phrases or some words that you might encounter, and I'll try to help you clarify what they actually mean. So here's the first one. It's the phrase, say less. All right, say less. Now, I understand how this one could be confusing if, like, a young person walked up to you and they said, and in the midst of a conversation, they said, say less. You might assume they were telling you to, like, keep it brief or stop talking, which could be, off-putting, right? Be a little bit offensive. But that's not what they're saying. They're just simply saying, you're right, I get it, I agree with you. So it's actually a good thing. So when somebody says say less, it's a good thing. And so we can check that one off the list. Let's move on to the next one. So I put these two together because they are closely related, right? Okay, the phrase check the drip and the word drippy. Now again, if you don't understand what's going on and you don't have the context for this and you don't know what they're saying, this is alarming, right? You're like, check the drippy. Like, do I need to go check the faucets in the house? Like, do you need a doctor? What is going on? But it's helpful to understand that for a young person, the word drip refers to their look or their style. And so when they say check the drip, they're actually asking you, how do I look? And if somebody looks good, then they say you're drippy. So if a young person calls you drippy, that's a good thing. That's a very good thing. All right, so hopefully we cleared that one up. No confusion there now. Now here's another one, the word bet. Now if you spend even just a minute talking to someone in this generation, you're going to hear this word like maybe a dozen times or more. I woke my son up this morning. He was the guy playing the guitar. I woke my son up this morning. I said, you've got 15 minutes to get ready. He said, bet. Like he's barely awake, and it's the first word out of his mouth. So you're going to hear this word a lot. And in the context of conversation, it might be, again, troubling because you're like, wow, this young person has a serious gambling problem. They are going to bet everything. Like they're going to bet it all. That's terrible. But honestly, what this really means is, and this is going to help a lot, it's going to set a lot of hearts and minds at ease here. They just mean like, okay, I get it. Like for sure. Like, right on is kind of another way to say, or cool. Like they say bet. Okay, that's what they mean by that. So that's good. And then this next one, this phrase, which is closely related, and again, you're going to hear it a lot, is the phrase no cap. No cap. And so, again, you're like, wow, this generation hates hats. Like, they're so against headwear in general. But it's not true, because this phrase, really what it means is, I'm serious, right? I'm dead serious, no cap. So you might ask a young person in the midst of conversation, like, are you serious? And they would say, bet. And you would say, bet? And they would say, no cap. And that's a conversation with a Gen Z person right there. That's like a whole conversation. And if you get to that level, you're actually making great progress, so good for you. That's good. And then this last word here is bussin'. Bussin'. And I don't know where they come up with these terms. I don't even know how these things originated, but the word bussin', it's like, are they looking for transportation? Like, what's happening? No, this word just simply means extremely great. Like if you ask, how was your meal last night? They might say bussin'. Yeah, it's extremely great. So anyway, there's just a little help for dads and really for families in general, just to help you understand what your young people are trying to say with the words that they're saying. And hopefully now you'll feel a little more confident engaging in some conversation with them. Try these words out. Just see how it goes. It could be entertaining. It could be embarrassing, but it's worth it. So the other thing that you need to know is I kind of snuck this in on you. Now that I've taken you through all of this, you are now fully trained and qualified to go serve in our youth ministry. So I hope you'll take advantage of that. But hey, there was a point to this little exercise. There was a point to this. And the point is that our words matter. Right? Our words matter. In fact, how we use our words, it matters. And that's because our words have incredible power. And you might be hearing me say this and you're like, Eric, I get it already. Like, say less, right? I get what you're saying. I know this. I've heard this before. And that's probably true. But I wonder how many of us really fully appreciate this. Because I know that far too many of us, I just know this is a common experience, far too many of us have a problem with running our mouth and ruining a moment. Right? I mean, haven't you ever ruined a moment just by running your mouth? I'm sure I'm not the only one here who's guilty of this. Okay, so like a couple of weeks ago, it was my day off. It was Friday, and I was out with Amanda. And we try to do this every Friday. We had kind of like our date in the morning. We were at a cafe. It was lovely. And then we did like a little walk along the causeway out to Honeymoon. And then we ran some errands. I mean, we were having a lovely day. And really just a beautiful moment throughout the day. And in fact, we had planned a little outing that evening with Ellie. We were going to take her to the movies. And we were looking forward to that. And then right before we left for the movies, Amanda and I were having this discussion. And it was a good discussion. Like it was an important discussion. It was healthy. It was productive. Until at one point, I opened my mouth, and out of my mouth came some words that were not all that carefully chosen words. And they more or less conveyed the ideas or the thoughts or the feelings that I wanted to convey, or wanted to express, but they came through in a way that I did not intend. And the moment I knew the moment was ruined was when Amanda responded with, "Okay, good talk." And it was gone. The moment was gone. And I had ruined a moment by running my mouth. And I made sure that she was okay with me sharing that with you this morning. And she said, yes, as long as everybody knows that it was your fault. Which I think was pretty clear in how that was shared with you. But we've all experienced this, right? We've all experienced, we've run our mouth and it's ruined a moment with our spouse or with our children or maybe with a parent or a friend or a coworker, just a careless comment. Or a thoughtless and ill-timed joke, or maybe just a biting comeback in the midst of a heated exchange. In fact, some of us at times, maybe we were so careless with our words that we've run our lives into the ground just by running our mouth. Relationships have been broken, or families have been divided, and credibility has been destroyed, or loved ones have been wounded in the process. And all because in the moment we simply forgot, or maybe we just never really fully appreciated how incredibly powerful our words truly are. It's been said, be careful with your words. Once they are said, they can be only forgiven, not forgotten. And so as we look throughout the scriptures, we begin to see this thread that's woven through where you and I are created for this beautiful life of fullness and freedom in relationship with God. In fact, really all of Scriptures, they're kind of like this light. All of the Scriptures are this light that illuminates the path forward into that life. But so often what happens in this journey that we're on is we find ourselves getting sidetracked. We find ourselves wandering or venturing or stepping off of the path that leads to life. And we find ourselves in unintended territory that's just loaded with hidden dangers. And so Solomon, this legendary king of Israel who was renowned throughout the ages for his wisdom, he wrote down in his ancient collection of Proverbs these warnings to his children so they would not stray from the path that leads to life. And last week I started what is basically this little series within the summer sessions that is called Watch Your Step. And so for a period of 4 weeks, starting last week, we're going to spend some time together in a section of Proverbs 4. Where Solomon really outlines 4 areas of our life that we need to watch closely in order to watch our step. And so today we're just going to pick up right where we left off last week. We're going to be looking at Proverbs chapter 4, verse 24. And here's what Solomon writes. He says, keep your mouth free from perversity. Keep corrupt talk far from your lips. Now remember, this is kind of a little refresher from last week, but this teaching falls within a section of the text that is addressed specifically to his children. Solomon is writing this to his children, and so it's almost like he's saying, kids, don't run your mouth. Right? Don't run your mouth. Like we would say to our kids, our Gen Z kids, say less. Like, no, seriously, literally, this time, say less. Like, every time you open your mouth, it's like you're digging yourself just a little bit deeper. So sometimes we just have to stop running our mouth. But then Solomon tells his kids, like, listen, there's going to come a time when you do have to open your mouth. You're going to have to use your words. So don't let your speech be full of perversity. Perversity. And I looked at this and I thought, man, here's my interpretation of what this looks like. This idea of perversity in our speech. It's really this mindset, this attitude, that I know what's appropriate. I know what's acceptable socially and in this moment and in this context. I understand all of that, but I just don't really care. I don't care about any of that. In fact, I'm just going to say whatever's on my mind. And I don't really care who hears it or what they think about me. And they think they're hilarious. Right? They love the fact that they just speak their mind and they can just say whatever comes to mind. They don't care. And I say they because I would never do this, of course. If that were only true, right? Probably all of us have someone like this in our lives, right? It's like they have a special gift for saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. And you know how this goes, right? I mean, there's usually some nervous laughter. There's maybe some shaking heads. There's a lot of awkward silence because the moment is ruined. The moment is lost because of the perversity in our speech. And then Solomon says this, he adds this, he says, don't let your words carry even a hint of corruption. And again, we've experienced this too, right? We know what this is like because it's that schmoozy, just kind of tell them whatever they need to hear. It doesn't matter if it's true or not, just so long as they come around to giving me what I want to take from them. Right? It's that kind of smooth talk, and it's oozing with flattery and manipulation. Eugene Peterson, he rephrased this proverb like this, and I love how he treats this. This is what he said. He said, don't talk out of both sides of your mouth. I love that. Don't talk out of both sides of your mouth. Avoid careless banter, white lies, and gossip. And so as I reflected on this proverb, I mean, it just seems to me that Solomon wants us to understand something when it comes to our words. He wants us to understand that our words have unbelievable power. Unbelievable power, because your words have a direct correlation with the kind of life that you're experiencing. And just to make sure we don't miss the implications with this, he doubles down with another proverb, and this is from Proverbs 13:3. He says, careful words make for a careful life. Careless talk may ruin everything. Now this, several years ago, I remember hearing a story that I think illustrates this perfectly, and I had to go back and kind of dig up the article just to make sure I got all the facts right, but this is like from 2016, and a young woman, a professional, she's a publicist who worked for a large firm at the time, and it's kind of ironic too when you hear how the story goes, because she's a publicist, but she's traveling abroad. She was getting ready to board this international flight, and she had this funny thought that came to mind. In her mind, it was hilarious, and it was kind of a joke about the people that she was going to go visit in this foreign place. And so she thought, I'm just going to post this to Twitter. And maybe my 170 followers, she was thinking, like, just 170 followers, not even a big following on Twitter. She thought maybe they'll get a kick out of this. But she posted the tweet, she sent it, and then she boarded her flight and really didn't think much of it. Now, I won't even share with you what the tweet said, because, I mean, you just need to know it more or less, I mean, it was case in point everything that Solomon is warning against in these Proverbs. At best, it was thoughtless, it was careless, it was foolish. At worst, it was incredibly insensitive and offensive. And so, while she was in the air, flying to this destination, apparently more than a few of her 170 Twitter followers, they took offense to this tweet. And before she even landed, the tweet had gone viral. She, in fact, was the #1 trending topic on Twitter at that time. Her name was the #1 trending topic. That's not a good thing in this situation. And in fact, a friend had gone in and tried to take down the Twitter account so that, to try to mitigate the damage here. But by that time, already tens of thousands of people had seen it and retweeted it and responded to it. And again, it had gone completely viral. So all of this is happening during the 11 hours that this woman is in the air. She has no idea what's going on. And so when she touched down, and she gets her phone out and she starts to look at what's happening, she discovers in that moment that she is no longer employed. Her Twitter account's no longer active. And the world had seemingly turned against her. I mean, case in point, what Solomon says here, careless talk may ruin everything. And again, here's what I think Solomon wants us to understand, that our words have power, of course, but our words have the power to create worlds. And I mean, stories like this one that I just shared, I mean, they demonstrate that truth on a devastating scale, because when we speak carelessly, and our words are foolish and confusing and damaging, the world that we are creating for ourselves and for those who are closest to us are directly influenced by and shaped by the words that we're saying. I mean, think about this. As soon as our words leave our lips, it's like they fill the air and they color the atmosphere. And they create this atmosphere. And they create an atmosphere that's either loving or hateful. An atmosphere that either builds up or tears down. An atmosphere that's either healing or wounding. And we create that atmosphere by the words that we speak, because our words have the power to create worlds. And in a very real and experiential way, they shape the reality that's impacting our day-to-day lives. And the reality that our words have shaped for us and those who are closest to us, it reveals something deeper about us at the very core of who we are. And Jesus actually had something to say about this. There's an occasion in the Scriptures. It's actually found in Luke chapter 6, but there's this occasion in the Scriptures where Jesus is teaching a large crowd of his followers. And at one point in his teaching, he starts to talk about trees and their fruit. And he's setting up and he's using a word picture here that's going to make a bigger and a deeper point here in just a minute. But Jesus says that you can tell what kind of tree you're looking at by its fruit. Right? You can tell what kind of tree you're looking at by its fruit. And not only that, but when you have that kind of tree with you, you can always expect to find that kind of fruit present. Right? I mean, it's a fairly simple concept I think we can all grasp, because we wouldn't go to an orange grove if we were looking for apples. Right? And we wouldn't plant a mango tree if we were hoping to produce or grow grapes. Right? So we all get that. And this is Jesus' point. You know a tree by its fruit. You know a tree by its fruit, and we understand from the word picture that Jesus is using here that the same is also true for people. It's the same thing for people. He says that you can tell the kind of person someone is by the fruit that comes out of their life, and that fruit is determined by the good or the evil that's been planted and stored up in our hearts. And this actually goes back to something we talked about last week. We mentioned that, where we talked about the fact that whatever captures our attention eventually gets into our hearts. And then Jesus takes this to the next level. And here's what he says at the end of verse 45 in Luke chapter 6. He says, "For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of." The mouth speaks what the heart is full of. And what Jesus is saying here is the same thing that Solomon was warning us about. That the kind of words that you say a lot about the kind of person that you are. The kind of words that you say a lot about the kind of person you are, because according to Jesus, what comes out of our mouth reveals what's actually in our hearts. And so if our words are hateful and harsh, it's because we have hatred and harshness in our hearts. And if our words are laced with perversity and corruption, it's because that's what we've stored up. We've stored up perversity and corruption in our hearts. And so if our words are often negative and toxic toward the people around us, Jesus says, that's what you're hoarding in your hearts. And this is why Solomon started this teaching with this, and it goes back to, again, what we looked at last week. He says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do and say flows from it. So, if you want to know how your heart is doing, you just need to listen to what your mouth is saying. Because the kind of words that you say a lot about the kind of person that you are. So the natural question that really comes with this, and a question that we should all be asking ourselves, is if someone is just listening to the words that I say, what kind of person would they say that I am? Right? I mean, think about this. And we have to be honest with ourselves when we really put ourselves in this situation. We ask this question because think about, maybe put it in these terms. What kind of atmosphere am I creating with my words? Here, I mean, at home or at the office or on the team or even standing in line at the grocery store. I mean, what kind of atmosphere are my words creating? Here's another way we can ask ourselves this question. What's it like to be on the other side of me? What's it like to be on the other side of me? And I know that's a challenging question for a lot of us, but here's why this is so important. It's important because if you're a follower of Jesus like I am, then Jesus told us that the world will know we are his followers by our love. It's by our love. And then he told his followers, go and love one another just as I have loved you. Love your neighbors as you love yourself, he said. It's love. Love is what sets us apart. It's what defines us. It's what marks us as his followers. And so if you're a follower of Jesus and your words are often harsh and mean, and they're frequently laced with perversity and corruption, then the first thing that should bother us about this is that our words do not reflect love in our hearts. And therefore, those kinds of words are not consistent with the way of Jesus. And what our words are really telling us at that point is that there are still areas of our life and areas of our hearts that we haven't fully surrendered over to Jesus. It reveals to us that there are still wounds festering in our heart, wounds that only he can heal, that we have yet to be healed. There are still areas of our life where we need maturing and growing and restoring. And so we need to recognize that. We need to turn those feelings and those thoughts and those wounds that we've been storing up in our hearts, we need to turn those over to Jesus. And we need to ask him for his help and for his healing. But here's another reason why this is so important for us. And this is true whether you're a Jesus person or not. Because so much of the beauty that we experience in this life is built around relationship. It's within community, right? Because we were not meant to do life alone, and we weren't designed for life apart from one another. And again, this is true for all of us, but it's especially true for those of us who are followers of Jesus because we were created for community. We are one another people. This is who we are. It's who we're called to be. And this is why it is so vital that we watch our mouth. Because when we run our mouth with careless and hurtful words, those words create a world that no one wants to live in. They create an atmosphere of conflict and fear and hostility and shame and confusion. And so the reason this is so important to Solomon and why he urges his children to understand this is because one of the quickest ways we can sabotage our own journey through this life is by poisoning the air around us with toxic and hateful words. So watch your step, Solomon says, by watching your mouth. And that means carefully choose the words you use. Carefully choose the words you use. Now listen, it rhymes. That phrase rhymes. I mean, it just, I did that last week on purpose. I thought it was kind of cute. This week it didn't. It just kind of happened by accident. But there you go. Maybe it'll help it stick or something. I don't know. But carefully choose the words you use. That means we just have to watch our mouth. And so if we're going to do this, there are 3 questions that we can ask ourselves that will actually help us do this and actually help us practice this and live it out. And I'm going to give you these 3 questions. And when we use these questions, if we will use them, they work like a gatekeeper for your mouth, right? And they help us to watch our mouth and the things that we say. So here's these 3 questions. 3 questions we need to ask ourselves, and I'm going to give them to you quickly because we're going to wrap things up here pretty soon. But the first question is this. Is it true? Is it true? Right? Come on, this should go without saying, right? When it comes to choosing our words, let's start by asking ourselves, are the words that are about to come out of my mouth, are they actually true? And if they're not, then what am I doing? Right? What am I doing? Because this is where so many of us make the first mistake in running our mouth and ruining a moment or a friendship or a life by speaking slanderous, mean-spirited, and malicious untruths to one another and about one another. So, is what I'm about to say, is it true? And let's speak only what is true and what is honest. But then we have to ask this. Is it kind? Is it kind? Now listen, when you walk up to somebody and you tell them, you look tired, right? And I know none of you would ever do this, right? And none of you would ever do this. But when you walk up to somebody, and this is even better, when you walk up to somebody and you tell them, you look terrible. Is it true? Is it honest? It might be, maybe, but is it kind? No, not really. And so I know, like, hey, I'm just being honest, right? I'm just being honest. Well, listen, just being honest means that you only speak the truth. That doesn't mean that you have to say everything that's true, right? I mean, let's be real. Like, if I'm just being honest, a lot of times I'm just being a jerk. So we have to ask ourselves, not only is this true, but is it also kind? And I love the way this one biblical writer puts this. And listen to what he says here. He says, be gracious in your speech. The goal is to bring out the best in others in our conversation, not put them down, not cut them out. So let your words always be gracious and kind. I love what Mother Teresa once said. She said, kind words can be short and easy to speak, but their echoes are truly endless. It's a great reminder for us to let our words always be true, but also they need to be kind. And then we need to ask ourselves this final question. Is it necessary? Is it necessary? Now, a couple of things that we've been saying to our kids for a long time now, but especially our youngest two, Gibson and Ellie. We tell them this all the time when it comes to helping them understand what they should or shouldn't say, like watch your mouth or just be careful how you speak or the words that you choose. We'll say to them, know your audience and read the room. Right? Know your audience and read the room. And I mean, these are principles that communicators use all the time, but we can apply this even in our conversations to make sure that we are using the contextual clues around us so that we say the right thing at the right time to the right person. So before you say what you want to say, make sure you know your audience and you read the room, because what you really want to say in that moment, even if it's true and even if it's kind and gracious, it may not be necessary. It may not be necessary at that time. And again, the New Testament writer shows us what this looks like when we live it out. And I love the way he says this. He says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, right? I mean, is it necessary? According to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Your words have that kind of power. Your words matter, and how you use your words, it all matters. And when we lose sight of this, and when we forget how powerful our words are, and we carelessly run our mouth to those around us, we stray from the path that leads to life. We step outside of that path, and we wander into dangerous and unintended territory where hidden dangers are all around us. So watch your step and watch your mouth by carefully choosing the words you're using. Are they true? Are they kind? And are they necessary? All right, Cypress, I love you. We've got some cold root beer waiting for us on the patio. So I'm going to turn you loose, and I hope you'll take advantage of this moment to just stick around, enjoy some community, and some ice cold root beers. Save one of those for me. I'll be out there in a minute. See you soon.